Hello and welcome to Seqwater. My name's Michael Fechner. I work for the community education team, and normally we'd be on a bus on our way to Wivenhoe Dam this morning as part of your sort of welcome to Seqwater, and we'd be taking a look at some of our wonderful infrastructure, the wonderful Wivenhoe Dam, Mount Crosby and possibly Bundamba water treatment plant. But as you know, the world is a very different place. And so therefore we are talking to you via this medium this morning, and I come from Studio Water. It's our home studio where we have been delivering education to kids as well, and which we're going to continue over the next few months. So thank you for joining us. I hope that I don't bore you too much. It's not quite as exciting as what it would be on the bus, but hopefully I can certainly introduce you to Seqwater and let you know that you are certainly becoming part of a dynamic workplace with a dynamic workforce and an incredible job in our community. Now, I don't know if many of you know the full story of Seqwater, but let me tell you a little bit. Seqwater is the bulk water authority for South East Queensland. We're a statutory body. We're responsible to 2 ministers, and we supply bulk water from our 26 dams and 37 water treatment plants. The water from there travels to a list of reservoirs which are then owned by the retailers, Unity Water, Urban Water Utilities, Gold Coast Water, Logan Water and Redlands Water, and they supply it on to the people. So we are the bulk water authority. Every day we supply around about 900 million litres of water to South East Queensland. Now our remit in that area is obviously to supply water to the community, but also to supply water to a number of irrigators, because we do have some irrigation areas as well that come off of some of the rivers in our dams and water storages. So if we think about an area, and I'm assuming that you're going to get to have a look at one of these shortly, but this is the map of the Seqwater grid. Basically in the north as far as Gympie, in the south as far as the Gold Coast, out to the Moreton Bay Islands, and then out to the foot of the Toowoomba Range. That's where our 26 dams, 600 kilometres of bulk water pipeline and our infrastructure sits, and that's where at the present moment 3.6 million people live. And in the future, we're told that that population is going to grow to 5 million people, and we need to be able to supply water safely and securely to that population. In terms of the water grid is something quite unique. At the time when it was developed in the early 2000s, there was nothing else like it in the world, and many people came to visit in what we would do and to have a look at what we were doing. In the early 2000s, South East Queensland was in the grips, as a lot of rest of Australia and Queensland, of the Millennium Drought. 10 years of drought that had severely affected our water supply capacity and therefore the supply to populations of drinking water. So the government at the time embarked on a massive job to try to drought-proof us. Our dams were down to about 15%, and they told us that within 12 months we were possibly going to run out of water. Now, you imagine that from a community, given the present situation of what's occurring, you imagine if we were running out of water. We know that places like Stanthorpe have also had severe troubles in this drought that we've had just recently. But at the early 2000s, the government embarked on a serious program, and what they did was they developed a number of strategies, I suppose, to try to supply water in an ongoing capacity as quickly as possible to avoid that Armageddon Day Zero type scenario that we hear so much about. 600 kilometres of pipelines. We connected 12 of our 26 dams together, and we were able to move water around. So we were able to move water from the north to the south very efficiently. So the dams on the north part of our grid on the Sunshine Coast are smaller dams that fill up very, very quickly because of where they are located in relation to the coast. They fill up fairly quickly, whereas our inland dams, such as Somerset and Wivenhoe, even though they're our biggest storages, don't fill up as quickly unless we get the rain in those particular areas, as we did in 2011. So the dams in the north, we can use that capacity as they are at the moment. They're quite full, so we can bring water from the north down into Brisbane, but we can conversely take it from the northern parts of Brisbane up into the northern part of the grid as well. The same thing with the Gold Coast. We can drag water also from Stradbroke Island, and the capacity to move that water around was quite incredible. So we were able to build those pipes and link the dams and create a capacity which we'd never had before. But still the biggest problem is that it is drought dependent. and water dependent. So if we don't have water, we don't have rain, then the dams don't fill up, then there's very little point of having all that infrastructure unless we can actually move it around and we do have the rain. So the reality of rain and the changes in climatic conditions also affect how we do things and what we do. And as I said, at the present moment, because the dams on the northern part of our grid are quite full, we can bring that water south. And that allows us to keep North Pine Dam out near Strathpine, I suppose, using it to a lesser degree until we make it rain into that part. So the grid was developed. Also, the powers that be at the time looked at what they could do to overcome this reality of no rainfall and climatic changes. So they built 4 significant other pieces of infrastructure. On the Gold Coast, we have the Tugun desalination plant, which was built and started operating around 2010, and it can supply around 130 megalitres of water into the system. It's been constantly operating in hot standby since it was built. It's been very good to be able to use when we've had major shutdowns at other treatment plants. And at the present moment, given the drought that has been around for the last number of months and become quite severe, even though we've had a little bit of rain, we've been able to have that water supplying into the south of Brisbane. So if you live within the urban water utility network, there's a fair chance that you're drinking some desalinated water from the Gold Coast. Yes, it is more expensive to create and to develop, but in the long run, it's a water supply that we can create 24/7, and many other countries in the world use that. As well as the desalination plant, 3 purified recycled water treatment plants were also built. 2 at the mouth of the Brisbane River, where the major sewerage plants are at Luggage Point and at Gibson Island, and also at Bundamba, where we have a number of water treatment plants flowing in that part of the grid as well. So those 3 purified recycled water treatment plants are capable of producing an equivalent amount of water almost as the desal, a bit more. But unfortunately, as you all know, the issue of recycled water is one that has got public interest a great deal. And even though places like Singapore and London use recycled water tremendously, people of southeast Queensland were not overly impressed. Toowoomba, during the Millennium Drought, was going to recycle water. They had a referendum. And water became somewhat very political, I would argue. So recycled water hasn't been used for drinking. It has been used for a little bit of industry and for our power stations. But the overall plan is to recycle the water and then pump it all the way to Wivenhoe as part of the Western Corridor program. And that water would flow from the mouth of the Brisbane River and other places out to Wivenhoe. It would flow into Wivenhoe and then come down and be treated at Mount Crosby and the such like. So the water grid is quite significant, and it's a really important part of what we do in southeast Queensland. As I said, SEQ Water is an amazing organisation that has, people don't realise just how much we really do. It's not just about collecting the water, storing it and treating it and then supplying it. We have people who are out, many of you may be in the water quality area, that are out on catchments looking after that. We have people dealing with people who operate around our catchments, which are really important, because our catchments are the beginning. If we have really good catchments, then our water quality is improved greatly. So we've got a lot of people working in that area around catchment management and with our landholders around our dams and things like that. Equally, as I said, water quality. We've also got, obviously, chemists and scientists working on different aspects of water. I believe we've even got a scientist working on our sludge that's coming out of water treatment plants now, and how that may be able to be used as a soil additive. So we are quite an innovative organisation, I believe. Tasked with a very significant job, though. We need to supply water to that 3.6 million people, and while that's our core business, there are a whole lot of other things around us as well. And as I said to you, we operate an education program. Just as we're educating you somewhat today, the kids in our schools are the future as well. And if we can actually develop and change their attitudes and develop a better mentality about how important water is, that's going to be great for the future. So I hope you enjoy what we're going to do. That's just a bit of a thing. Please, there'll be some people there that, or you might be able to ask some questions. If you have some questions, please don't hesitate to send them to education@seqwater.com.au, and we'll come back to you with some information and pass it on to those people who can help you. But we're going to show some videos and talk a little bit about, first of all, Wivenhoe Dam and its facilities. Then we'll come back to Mount Crosby, and we'll talk a little bit, hopefully then, a little bit about the Western Corridor scheme as well. So I hope you enjoy this. It's a different format, but please stay with us and enjoy it as we go. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Southeast Queensland uses about 300,000 megalitres of water a year, which is about 120,000 Olympic swimming pools. Roughly 70% of that water is used for residential purposes. That's about 165 litres of water per person per day and more in summer. The water we use starts its journey as rain. Water flows into a dam from rain falling in the area around it called a catchment. SEQ Water has 26 dams and 51 weirs to store the water we need to use when we need it. Dams and weirs also help mitigate floods and also provide the community with popular recreation facilities. We live in a climate of extremes. The volume of rain and where it falls can be unpredictable. We have long droughts punctuated by extreme floods. With our increasing population and changing climate, there is more pressure on our water supplies than ever before. The SEQ Water Grid is our connected network of water catchments, storage dams, treatment plants, reservoirs and pipelines. SEQ Water also have two climate-resilient sources of water, the Gold Coast Desalination Plant and the Western Corridor Recycled Water Scheme. No matter where you are in the region, it's important we develop good water habits so we have enough to meet future demand. Everyone has a role to play in using water wisely, so there's enough for everyone.
Well, that last little video just gives you a little bit of an indication and backs up what I said, just how the operation of the organisation goes. So it gives you an overview of how things operate. Let's move now to Wivenhoe. Wivenhoe is the largest dam that we operate of our 26 dams. It was built in the 1980s to offer two particular things to us. Obviously supply water, but also as a flood mitigation dam. In the 1974 floods, Somerset Dam, there was some great flooding in the 1974 floods in Brisbane, as we know. And after that time, Wivenhoe Dam was built. About 1.3 million megalitres of water of storage can be held for drinking, and a further 2 million or thereabouts can be held for flood mitigation if required. And obviously in 2011 and since that time, during Cyclone Oswald and other times, the dam has been used to certainly to store water as such. The 2011 floods were quite significant in that they were two single rain events greater than the 1974 floods, and the amount of water certainly provided for interesting times in terms of how we operate those facilities and so on. I'm going to show you some videos now of Wivenhoe Dam and its main features. We'll have a look at the fact that about 2.1 kilometres or thereabouts is the wall length. It's a clay-filled core rock wall dam with a number of steel gates in the front, and it's a spillway dam that has steel gates. A passive spillway dam, that many of our dams are just concrete walls that water will slowly flow over, whereas Wivenhoe, Somerset and North Pine in particular are gated dams that we have to have gates to open to allow the water to actually come out, and that's how we let the water out. We also need environmental flows down the Brisbane River to ensure that the Brisbane River flows and there's enough water travelling down the Brisbane River to get to Mount Crosby, where our largest water treatment plant is, to be able to supply water into Brisbane. So Wivenhoe's got a number of features. It's obviously got very large steel gates. It's got nearly 2,500 square kilometres of catchment that we catch water in that flow down through the Stanley and Brisbane River systems into Wivenhoe. So the water flows into Somerset and then into Wivenhoe. And it's created a massive dam, which is also, just as a matter of interest, a place where nearly 2 million people recreate every year on our facilities that are provided there. As I mentioned earlier on, while we've got many people doing lots of things about water quality, catchments and the recreation in those catchments is very significant also. So many of you may be working in the recreation areas, and we have those many people that come to our beautiful sites. They love coming to them, whether it be camping, fishing, boating or whatever, on our recreation sites, and Wivenhoe and Somerset have a number of those facilities as well. One of the other features that's quite significant is the auxiliary spillway that was built in an upgrade to the dam also. It provides like I suppose, a safety mechanism, so that when the dam is filled up, if it gets to a situation where the dam wall is compromised, the auxiliary spillway will actually slowly start to erode, and that will allow water to be released that will not impinge upon the dam wall, because ultimately our dam wall is the most important part of the whole dam at Wivenhoe. And while we can open the steel gates up, it's very important to know that only so much water can flow out of those, and if we did, like 2011, had a severe flood event, we need to have something to protect the integrity of the dam, but also to the overall view of the water supply as well in the future. So the auxiliary spillway, which you'll have a look at on one of the videos, is an opportunity to actually show how that facility can protect the dam as well. So we'll have a look at Wivenhoe, a number of the facilities there, and then we'll head on down the road to Mount Crosby. So stay with us, and I hope you enjoy it still. Thank you.
Wivenhoe Dam. Wivenhoe Dam was designed and built as a multifunctional facility.
As part of the Seqwater grid, Wivenhoe Dam's main function is to provide safe drinking water to Brisbane and the surrounding areas. It is also used to generate hydroelectricity and for flood mitigation.
The dam has a storage capacity of 1.16 million megalitres for urban water storage. During a flood, however, the dam is designed to hold up to a further 2 million megalitres for a limited amount of time. This helps to prevent small floods and reduces the impact of a large flood. Lake Wivenhoe, which is the body of water formed by the dam, is also the lowest storage for a hydroelectric power station situated on the shore of the lake opposite Wivenhoe Dam wall. Enjoy the tour. Dam wall.
Lake Wivenhoe was formed by building a solid dam wall across the river valley, stopping the river flow. This created a water storage for the community to use.
Opened in 1985, the dam wall at Wivenhoe is 2.3 kilometres long and 50 metres high. It is built with a solid core of clay in the middle to prevent water leakage and an outer layer of rock for strength. It has a built-in spillway, which is a section of a dam designed to let a controlled amount of water out into the Brisbane River. Normally, this release is to maintain the river system and to provide water for treatment plants. However, in a flood, spillways also stop a dam from overflowing, something that could damage or destroy it. Within the dam wall, there is also a small turbine used to generate hydroelectricity, which is one of the cleanest and most efficient forms of energy generation. Rainfall and storage. Australian weather has always been about extremes. Frequent periods of severe drought and major flooding are well documented throughout the continent. Experts predict that climate change will have an increasing impact on natural ecosystems through increased temperatures, extreme weather events, and less rainfall in many regions of Australia. Wivenhoe Dam was originally designed as a flood mitigation and water storage dam following the 1974 flood. At full capacity, Wivenhoe Dam contains 100% drinking supply and more than double that of temporary floodwater storage. After 7 days of storage at full capacity, the floodwater held in the dam has to be released. In an extreme flood, an auxiliary spillway wall will erode away to allow further floodwaters to be released and to ensure the safety of the dam wall.
Well, I hope Wivenhoe is very clear in your minds now and you have a good understanding of it. But again, look, when this whole crazy business is over, the opportunity to get out there and have a look, and we'd be very keen to take you out and have a look, because there's nothing like standing within the wall, having a look at the facilities around there and just seeing how much of a massive beast it really is. And a lot of people take it for granted, but it's an incredible facility. And it's really worthwhile getting a look at firsthand. So hopefully you'll get a chance of looking at that at a later stage. We're now going to travel down the river, 60 kilometres or so thereabouts, and we're going to end up at Mount Crosby water treatment plant. The original Mount Crosby water treatment plant, the pumping station, was built in the 1890s to supply water from the Brisbane River in the early days via a number of our early dams, Lake Manchester and Gold Creek Dam and those. Today the water goes to the Mount Crosby weir, where it is pumped out to two stations. East Bank takes a water, and it can produce at its maximum around about 700 odd megalitres of water. And there's also a newer plant that was built later called West Bank, and we can produce at full capacity there about 250 megalitres of water. So as you can see, working full capacity, East Bank and West Bank could probably supply our southeast region, but the reality is we've still got to pump it over very long distances. So West Bank, we're going to have a look at West Bank. West Bank, as I said, we take the water through a number of facilities from the river into the treatment plant where it's treated. And look, the water treatment process is very simple. The conventional water treatment process, where we basically, our biggest problem within the Brisbane River is dirt and clay and silt, which was a big problem during the 2011 floods. And what we basically do is we remove those things. Sometimes there's some manganese, which is naturally occurring as well. But we basically remove those elements via some processes called flocculation and coagulation, where we use a chemical to clump the organic and clay material together. It drops to the bottom of a tank, it gets vacuumed off, that's a sludge. We then put water through filtration. Mount Crosby West Bank has dissolved air filtration as well as normal filtration, and at one stage the dissolved air filtration was the largest one of its kind in the world, where we inject water particles into the water to collect the dirt particles. They float to the top as a blanket, which we then wash off, and the water continues down through sand and other filter mediums. The water then is basically clean, of which we chlorinate, we add fluoride, we make sure that the water chemistry is right so that it's not too alkaline, the pH is right, and then the water is moved to large reservoirs at Cameron's Hill, which can be gravity fed down to Brisbane. So West Bank and East Bank work very much together to be able to provide that water supply. So have a look at the West Bank plant, and we'll come back after that one. So enjoy.
Treating water. The West Bank water treatment plant at Mount Crosby takes water from the Brisbane River and treats it to drinking quality before it is sent to customers' taps. During the treatment process, organic matter, sediment, and minerals such as manganese and iron are removed. Finally, the water is dosed with chlorine. Fluoride is added to reduce tooth decay.
The water is monitored and tested at all stages of its journey through the treatment process to ensure that by the time it leaves the plant, it meets Australian drinking water guidelines, which are amongst the strictest in the world.
The plant has a capacity to produce 250 million litres of drinking water a day. It can be expanded if required to be 4 times larger in size. Enjoy the tour. Drinking water supply. Drinking water is pumped to reservoirs at Cameron's Hill. Fluoride is also added prior to Cameron's Hill reservoirs as a protective dental health measure.
As the water leaves Cameron's Hill Reservoir, chlorine and ammonia are added to produce chloramine, a long-lasting disinfectant that prevent the formation of microorganisms. East Bank and West Bank water treatment plants produce enough water to supply Brisbane and surrounding areas that are connected to the South East Queensland water grid.
The water from the East Bank and West Bank treatment plants supplies the Brisbane region and connects to the South East Queensland water grid. The water grid is a network of treatment facilities, pipelines, dams and reservoirs that moves treated water across the region to where it is needed.
Okay, so far we've got the water in the storages at Wivenhoe. You've seen that. We're moving down the river now. We've gone to Mount Crosby. You've seen how we've cleaned the water up there. And as I said, the most important thing we've got to really worry about is the silt and the material that's in the Brisbane River. Remember, after the water comes out of Wivenhoe, it travels down the Brisbane River, and there are a lot of farms, there's fertiliser and things that end up in the water supply, and there's also sewage plants that release their effluent into the Brisbane River as well. So Mount Crosby's a significant facility and quite important to the people of Brisbane. But as I said to you, all of that's fine and good as long as we have rain. If our dams are full, that's great. But even in flood time, if the water is too dirty, too turbid, we can't treat it as we did in 2011. So we need to have alternative water supplies. In the 2011 floods, we were able to bring water from the desalination plant up into Brisbane to supply water there for quite a while when many of our treatment plants were inoperable. But now we're going to travel to Bundamba, not far from Mount Crosby, and here is our advanced water treatment plant. One of them that takes water from the river and takes water from Goodna, Bundamba, and a couple of other sewage treatment plants that are owned and operated by Urban Water Utilities. The water is already treated to an environmentally friendly standard that's dropped back into the river, but it still has elements in it, nitrates and phosphates that are not good to the environment. But it also has organic matter in it and other biological matter which we can remove through the processes at this advanced water treatment plant. And Bundamba operates to be able to provide that water for the future. And as I said, the water from Bundamba could very well end up in Wivenhoe Dam, where via a pipeline that goes out there, and it would just come back down then through the normal river system and be treated at Mount Crosby. So recycled water is part of our remit. And as I said, with our dams at I think they're about 65% at the moment or thereabouts, the government has a policy whereby when we get to a certain percentage, these treatment plants are going to be looked at being recommissioned again, reoperating and providing water for that system. There's still a bit of work to be done there on making sure that people are clear and understanding. And so we're very much operating at trying to do that and have people understand recycled water. The water cycle in nature recycles water naturally. The water that's moving around has been moving around for millions of years. It's the same water. So in actual fact, we're already drinking recycled water. It's nothing new, but we just people need to know it and clearly. And I think the other thing too is that the water that comes out of this plant, the one at Bundamba and the other two at the mouth of Brisbane River, is highly manufactured, and the water quality is second to none. and we should be very assured of the quality of that water that comes out of those plants. So have a look at these processes. Obviously, the water that comes to us as a source water has already been treated at a sewage treatment plant, so the yuck and the muck is already gone. So we get water that is, if you look at it in a glass, it looks reasonably clean. We need to obviously put it through some processes, use a number of chemicals, and do some things that take the water and make it into drinking. So we've got microfiltration, we have reverse osmosis, which is significant. We have UV light and remineralisation of the water then that can provide us with a quality drinking water. And as I said, at the moment that water does and has been used to cool our power stations instead of taking water from our dams. And obviously there's a marketplace there for industry to use it as well. But at the present moment, recycled water is something that we are certainly looking at for the future, and it'll be something that we need to think about moving forward into our water future. So have a look at the Bundamba Advanced Water Treatment Plant, and we'll continue the journey.
Water we've already used, called wastewater, is generally treated before being released into our rivers or oceans. Recycling this water for drinking means taking this pre-treated wastewater and purifying it to exceed drinking water standards so that we can use it again rather than waste it. How is this done? The wastewater undergoes multiple processes to purify it. The key ones to be aware of are microfiltration, reverse osmosis, and advanced oxidation. To explain, microfiltration involves passing the pre-treated wastewater through fine membrane filters that remove particles and microorganisms, including bacteria and some viruses. In the reverse osmosis stage, this filtered water is forced through a special membrane at high pressure to further remove other impurities, such as pesticides and viruses. Finally, during advanced oxidation, the water is exposed to ultraviolet light and hydrogen peroxide. This process removes remaining traces of organic compounds and organisms. The result is purified water of a very high quality. In fact, the water exceeds Australian drinking water standards. There are two ways purified recycled water can then be introduced to our drinking water supply: direct potable reuse and indirect potable reuse. Direct potable reuse means putting the now purified recycled water directly into the drinking water supply. This is an energy and cost-efficient method of recycling water, as it eliminates the need to pump the water to a storage facility, then retreat it. Direct potable reuse schemes are growing internationally, with countries such as the United States and South Africa increasingly using it as a vital water source. Current state regulations don't allow for direct potable reuse schemes in Queensland. This may change in the future as acceptance and understanding of these schemes increases. Indirect potable reuse means adding the recycled water to other untreated water, generally in a dam or groundwater basin. The purified water mixes with the untreated water and is treated again in a conventional water treatment plant before entering the water supply. This water supply is currently being used in over 20 sites across the world, including California, London, Singapore and Perth. Sometimes indirect potable reuse is unplanned. This happens when communities along a river or waterway discharge their treated wastewater into the river, which then flows onto communities downstream, where it's extracted and treated for drinking water. This is common in Australia and around the world. In southeast Queensland, we have the ability to produce purified, recycled water through the Western Corridor Recycled Water Scheme. This scheme was built during the Millennium Drought, but is not currently in use. When operating, it can produce up to 180 megalitres of water per day. This water can be used to replenish Wivenhoe Dam before being treated again at the Mount Crosby water treatment plants. Recycling water for drinking is a climate-resilient option. It is marginally impacted by drought, as we generally use less water during dry times, meaning there's less wastewater available for purification. In comparison to other water supply options, recycled water is less energy intensive and less costly than desalination, but it does require more energy to produce than surface water and is therefore currently more expensive. The regulators of water recycling schemes here in Australia and worldwide currently ensure the monitoring of water quality standards are higher than those applied to most other water supply options. Regardless of whether recycled water is introduced to the water supply directly or indirectly, it is a resilient water source, often resulting in reduced nutrient discharge into our waterways.
Well, that's about it, folks. I hope you've enjoyed the journey of water from the clouds to the tap, basically. As I said, Wivenhoe Dam is a tremendous facility, and our other dams within our network operate exactly the same way in many respects. As I said, there's only a number of gated ones, but a lot of them are passive spillways. But the reality is that they all combine to give us a capacity to supply water, whether it's a dam, a weir, an aquifer, or something else within our network. It provides that. And the people that work within our region as SEQ Water team members are certainly playing a very important role in supplying water and water security within Southeast Queensland. So I wish you the very best in your chosen career moves, and hopefully that you'll have a wonderful time at SEQ Water. And I look forward to talking to you again. Keep an eye on our education program and what we do. It's amazing, and I hope that you have enjoyed today. But hopefully down the track we'll be able to take you on a journey face to face with the facilities at Wivenhoe and Mount Crosby and other ones, and enjoy them. So may water be with you, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Whether you drink it, work with it, or play in it, water is an essential part of every Southeast Queenslander's life, every day. Delivering that water to more than 3 million people in a safe, clean and reliable way is what SEQ Water does. That means much more than managing our 26 dams and catchments, because dams hold water, they don't make it. The lessons we've learned from the Millennium Drought and from subsequent floods is that you can't always count on the rain when we need it, where we need it. So to secure our water future, we need to plan. Plan for the challenges of our climate, for extreme weather conditions, for an increasing population and changing water usage, for more than 2.6 million visitors to our recreation sites each year, plan to manage the 1.6 million hectares of catchment land that water flows across and into our dams, and of course, plan to protect our environment and biodiversity. At SEQ Water, we have a plan to meet the challenges of today, tomorrow and the future, enabling the continued supply of safe, clean and reliable water. At the heart of our plan is our unique water management and distribution network. In Southeast Queensland, we now have more than 600 kilometres of pipeline connecting a series of treatment plants fed by major drinking water storages from Lake McDonald in the north to Hinds Dam in the south. We call this the water grid. As our regions experience different weather patterns and rainfall events, demand for water varies. The water grid means we can support local supply by moving water around the region in both directions, from the Sunshine Coast to Greater Brisbane and the Redlands Coast to the Gold Coast. That treated grid water is delivered by us to our water service provider partners, where its quality is tested again and then sent to household taps. But moving water still relies on water being available, and because we can't always count on the rain as our only water source, we've built advanced water treatment plants and a desalination plant to treat wastewater and seawater and provide an alternative source of water that meets the stringent Australian drinking water guidelines. Desalination moves seawater through multiple treatment stages to remove salt and other minerals. The main stage of desalination involves a process known as reverse osmosis, where water is passed through a series of filters under high pressure. The desalination plant at the Gold Coast already contributes to our region's water supply and water security. Advanced water treatment plants also play an important part in our water future. Our 3 plants take treated wastewater, or water that's already been used and processed at a wastewater treatment plant, and passes it through additional treatment stages. The main stages are membrane filtration, where water passes through filters to remove particles and microorganisms, reverse osmosis, UV advanced oxidation, where hydrogen peroxide is added and reacts with UV light, chlorine disinfection, and stabilisation. At the end of this process, the treated water already meets Australian drinking water guidelines. However, the final stage of the process is for this water to be dispersed into Wivenhoe Dam and eventually make its way through our water treatment plants once more. Together, our dams, our water grid, desalination and advanced water treatment plants provide the key assets for our plan to provide South East Queensland with a climate-resilient water supply into the future. We can count on another drought. We can count on more floods. But what we can't count on is rain when we need it and where we need it. This is why we continue to develop a robust plan for a sustainable water future for South East Queensland.